everybody! So today I wanted to do a video all about opening an Etsy shop. I'm going to cover the pros and cons and answer some questions that I know I would have loved to know the answer to before I'd set up an Etsy shop. I'd love to know your experiences with Etsy, and I'm sure that other viewers would love to also know your thoughts. If you have used Etsy as a seller, please feel free to leave a comment so that everyone else can benefit from everyone else's feedback. So first of all, I'm going to start with the cons, all the negative things about Etsy and the reasons why I wouldn't open an Etsy shop. So the first one is specific to artwork, and that is the fact that Etsy isn't an art marketplace. So people don't only go there for art. Most of them, I would say, maybe go for jewellery or for little things around the home, but not necessarily big artworks that are quite expensive. For example, there are websites like Art Finder, which is purely just for artwork. However, I have actually recently shut down my Art Finder shop because even though it was an art marketplace, a website purely for artwork, I barely got any sales, any views, and I just didn't like it. Just because it's an art marketplace doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get everybody wanting to buy original art from you. The next con is Etsy fees. So this is when you add products to your shop, and also when you sell a product and you maybe use a credit card or PayPal for the transaction, it does take a small cut of that sale. We're talking maybe 3% or something like that. So if you're selling like big pieces, it's not too much of a big deal because in your mind you have to set that aside before you put that money into your bank. Once again though, however, compared to Art Finder actually take 30% of the total price of your product, and I think that's a ridiculous amount for saying that you are the one that is putting in all the hard work in adding the listing and packaging it up and sending it. So in that respect, Etsy's 3% or whatever the figure is not too bad. So one thing that I've noticed on Etsy is that large purchases aren't very often bought on there. So usually they're smaller things, maybe a print or stickers or cards or something that someone can just like quickly buy. Sales can be slow for large purchases. So if you've got lots of prints on offer or little things that aren't too expensive for the buyer, then that will be a lot better. But if you only sell original artwork that is quite large or like large in money terms, then you may have to wait a little bit longer for the sales to come in. Obviously, just because there's less sales doesn't mean there's less profit, because you could sell lots of little things and then a couple of bigger items and make more profit on them. So how many sales you get doesn't necessarily mean anything, but it's how much profit you're making. So if you have to wait a little bit longer to sell a large purchase, then in the long run, you've actually put in less effort than sending loads of little packages. So although Etsy is a selling platform, don't be fooled into thinking that Etsy does all the hard work. The only thing Etsy does is show it on their website, basically. So you have to take your photos, add your photos in, add all the descriptions, you have to work out all your shipping policies and return policies, you have to answer all conversations, and basically you have to look after everything about your store. So I don't want you to be under the illusion that you just upload it on there and then it just sells and makes money just by itself, because that's not true. If you have an Etsy shop and you're making a living off of it, then you will most likely be updating it or doing something to it every single day. So I don't feel like that's necessarily a con because I knew that going into it, but I do feel like sometimes people may not realise how much work actually goes into maintaining an Etsy shop. At the moment, they were the actual only cons that I could think of. So now on to some pros. First of all, it's a marketplace. People can find you on Etsy. Imagine a real marketplace in real life. If you just sit in your art studio making art all day, no one's going to see you, but if you put yourself out there on the marketplace, even if you're on the end stall in the corner, you're still going to get some people looking at you. And that is the main reason why I think Etsy is worth it. Because especially if you don't have a huge social media following, people are going to really struggle to find you if you don't put yourself out there on some sort of marketplace platform. Etsy is all about handmade, unique items, and artwork is definitely that. Another thing that I really like about Etsy is how easy it is to accept payments. So I don't know if you've used any other platforms online, but sometimes it can be difficult with credit cards, and maybe you've heard of Stripe, and I don't know, I get very stressed out when I think about how to accept money because it it all feels too business-like, you know? Whereas Etsy just completely takes care of that. The customer can use whatever payment method they prefer, and you don't even have any sort of involvement in the transaction itself. You just get the order and then send it through. And that is what I find so stress-free. Another thing that I think is quite good, which is funny because a lot of other people, a lot of videos like I've seen like this, a lot of people use this as a con, and that is your shop appearance. So a lot of people say that you can't customize it enough. Compared to a lot of other sites, you can actually customize it quite a lot, I feel. You can add a banner, you can add a logo, you can add an image, and you can reorder what's on your page. I really feel that recently Etsy has made some changes that you can make your brand still stand out even on your Etsy shop page. It's important to bear in mind that Etsy is its own website. It's not hosting a website for you. When you think about a website like eBay or something like that, you can't have any customizable things. I mean, I know eBay is a completely different platform, but I do feel that brand recognition is quite strong on Etsy. Another pro which I think is that it's fairly easy to look after, especially because they have an app where you can control orders, listings, conversations. Nearly half of the work I put in on my Etsy shop is through the app on my phone when I'm sat having a coffee or something like that. I mean, that is just so much easier than a lot of other platforms. Another thing what I think is fabulous about Etsy is a review system. That is that someone can leave a review, but not only that, they can add stars and they can also upload their own picture of your item in their house. And I think that is absolutely amazing. Granted, not a lot of my customers have done it, but the ones that have, I really, really appreciate the fact that they've gone and done that, because I think it really encourages other buyers to have a look at your stuff, because it shows that it looks the same. It looks the same as it does on your website than it does in the customer's hands, and I think that is really important. It also gives you a chance to really show yourself as a business person, because when someone goes on your landing page on your Etsy shop, you've got your reviews there, and obviously if you're not a very good business person, that's not a very good thing, but if you hold like a lot of things in high regard, like packaging or being on time and replying to conversations and making the buying process as easy as possible, then that will show in your reviews and you will have a 5-star review most likely. And I think that's a really nice thing that's been put there, because if you feel like you have done a good job, then it shows other buyers that you're a good person and that you do fulfill what you promise. Another thing that I think is really important that a lot of people don't necessarily think of, I know I didn't think of it until I'd already opened an Etsy shop, is the fact that when someone buys something from you, so a painting for example, it gives you their contact details, so you can send them an email and say thank you for your order, and you can stay in contact with them. And that is something like a gallery, for example, wouldn't be able to offer, because those contacts are buyers from the gallery. So this makes it possible to get in contact with your buyers again in the future and say, maybe I've got a new collection coming out, or would you like to be a part of my newsletter, or something like that. And that is the key, really, to building a proper audience and growing your community that love your work. That's what's going to make you more successful over a period of time. Another fabulous thing is the statistics. Oh man. On your Etsy dashboard, I suppose it would be called, you can actually go down and choose stats, and that will show you all the kind of different stats and analytics to do with your Etsy page. This can be so helpful because I can see exactly how many people have been directed to my Etsy shop from my website, from my Instagram, from my Facebook, and it can really show you what's working and maybe what's not working. It also shows you your most viewed product, and it's just really, really helpful. I think it can also make you feel a bit better, because when you maybe haven't sold anything for however long, then it can make you feel better because you can see that people are looking, and sometimes people can look at an artwork for a year or so and be waiting for the perfect moment to buy it. You can see it doesn't mean that you're not being successful or building up your career as an artist. It just shows that people need a little bit more time. So for now, I think that's all the pros and cons that I could think of about an Etsy shop. I hope that it's offered some clearer perspective on opening an Etsy shop. I've also made a video about some tips to sell art online. I'll link it in the corner of this video right now for you to go and check that out if you've not already seen it. And I just want to thank you so much for watching this video. Again, I hope it's been helpful, and don't forget to follow me on social media, and have a wonderful, wonderful week. Bye!